Welcome back to the things we know. Today, we're talking about The Power Code by Katty K and Claire Shipman, recommended to me by my good friend Lisa here. And I'm so glad I read it on vacation. It was so much easier to take in. I think I would have been kind of anxious reading it in my busy life. But we're going to
Yeah.
focus on one chapter in particular, but I recommend the whole book that hit us right between the eyes. And it's pots and pans and power. I have other words I would add to that too, but it's about the truth that we can't empower women fully outside the home until the balance of responsibilities inside the home changes. And that imbalance, especially the mental load, was thrown into sharp relief during the pandemic, which we may or may not touch on. I'm sure we will. But what I want to say too is it may sound surprising coming from us. We're not actively raising little kids right now, but we're not so far from it that we can't relate. And there's still aspects of it, even with like grown kids, that really hit home. I don't know if you felt the same
Yeah,
way.
no, I mean, I think that's the thing that's so fascinating. And I was just having this conversation with one of my clients whose children are younger, and like her oldest is 9. And so I'm her business coach. So we're working on her business. And one of the things she's focusing on for 2026 is like, how do I scale back and, so higher rates, blah, blah, blah. And I said, so often people think that once your kids get older, they need you less. And that's not true. And I think that, even with our kids being the ages they are, Charlotte's 19, Peter's just about to turn 24, right? Even
Right.
that age, they're starting out their life for the first time. They're going to college, they're starting out their life, whatever it might be. Empty nesting doesn't mean like everything poof goes away and they're just
No,
taking care of themselves all of a sudden. So I don't think I assume there's a time where we're paying less attention to our kids' lives, but not I don't yet feel that, I guess I want to say.
yeah. I think not to get you off topic because I always do this at the beginning. Let me spin this way. But I will say this, and you and I've talked about this. And I think we talked about it with your friends in Chicago because you had so many people that were there when we were there that, were kind of updating you on their lives. Is
Yeah.
I think that we think, those of us who have kids, I think that we assume, and it makes sense to assume this, that, okay, when our kids are like older and busier and driving themselves or even off to college, we're going to see each other so much. And
Right.
actually, for some of us, that's when we got to finally like started kicking our career into high gear, or
Right.
we had to, because
Right.
hello, got to pay for college. Um, Either way, I'm noticing because the activities aren't bringing me together with some of those friends. Like it is like really harder to see each other because we're trying to do all the things. Like we're still kind of taking care of a lot of the home based stuff for everybody and we're working. And anyway, it's not to go into that tangent, but
Well,
I,
and
I
we
do
haven't
think that's
even
a sign of it.
and you might we did a whole episode on sandwich generation. You
Right.
also might be helping care for your parents, right?
Yes.
So,
Many people too. That's
yeah,
true.
I want to presence that we are very specifically dealing with this one chapter today, but it is our intention to come back later this season and talk more about this book because this one, like you said, it kind of like I texted you read halfway, like maybe 2 pages into the chapter. It's like this is an entire episode. But
Yeah.
this whole book in general, we want to come back to and dig a little deeper. Because this really wasn't until I got to this chapter. I had different visions of what I thought we would talk about when talking about the Power Code. Katty K and Claire Shipman are best-selling journalists who've written extensively on women, confidence, and leadership. You have heard me talk about them before because The Confidence Code by them is one of my favorite books as well. In the Power Code, though, they argue that traditional, hierarchical, ego driven models of power don't serve women or men or society. They call for a new kind of power, which is collaborative, purposeful, and joy driven. That's mind blowing.
Mm.
As they put it, quote, power is not about control, it is about impact. And
Mm.
critically, they point out that this redefinition of power doesn't start in the C suite or in politics, it starts at home. That being said, and again, we'll do this much in more depth when we talk about the book in a bigger context, but power is about impact as far as women are concerned. But that's the whole thing that's so
Yeah.
interesting about this is for men, and this is not, again, I hate that we always couch this, but this isn't about saying the way men deal with power is necessarily bad. It's just it tends to be, their research has shown that men look for power over and women look for power for. Like when women have power and they talk to a lot of different people all over the world in different, women that run countries in Africa, women who are in CEOs, all these different stratas. But when women have power, more likely than not, they use that power to help others. To if they're in a business, they're helping bring other women up into leadership. If they're running a country, they're making sure that all the social safety nets are there. Whereas men get to a point where they just, what more can I do? How can I have
Mm.
power over? Which, of course, we are certainly seeing in our country right now.
Yes. And yes, I guess I could argue there's probably, I mean, argue, I guess I could probably find there's plenty of really, healthy men out there who also want to make an impact. Or I think about,
And there's plenty of women who are using power over.
like
Let's not.
two male parents and stuff. And yeah, anyway, yeah. But you're right. In general, this is this all really hits home. So this chapter makes it plain. Like if one person and arguably in this society, most often the woman, and it's not just the society, that's the greatest thing about like the
Yeah.
research that's out there. This is true in a lot of Western cultures and Eastern cultures. If they're carrying the majority of household and caregiving duties, that imbalance limits the ability for leadership and opportunity elsewhere. So like, I mean, like there, and we're gonna keep coming back to this. Like you really, it's so basic, but because it's so part of our DNA and also part of our routine that we don't realize that the amount of time we're spending, on things at home definitely cuts out of something somewhere else.
Yeah, it's not only, I mean, you said ability, I think it's capacity, right? It's
Capacity, yeah.
bandwidth, right? Because women, while they're running homes, also have
Thank
the
you.
ability to be running
You're right.
businesses. But you and I both know this as entrepreneurs and mothers and wives, that it's the capacity.
Okay.
We talk
Absolutely.
about this a lot. You and I have talked about this a lot. Like we wake up every day and think, okay, what do I have the ability, the capacity to do today? And it does vary from day to day. I mean, as you know, right, there's some stuff going on right now in my life that is limited in my capacity to try to build the business transformation
Mm,
for real a little bit,
mhm.
and so I think that's why it struck us both, because it's really in our face right now. Yeah, Katty and Claire don't mince words. They say, again, quote, often the biggest barrier to women getting power isn't bosses, it's husbands.
Ooh.
I know. Ouch. Oh, and again, we love Darren and Brian. Brendan. That's my brother-in-law. I'm sure my daughter, my sister also loves Brian. We're not just talking about chores though. And this is the key, right? It's one thing to divvy up chores. We're talking about the mental load, the invisible, constant project management of family life. It's
Mm,
really just that simple. A recent US study found that mothers carry about 71% of the household mental load. The planning, the anticipating, the remembering, compared to 29% of fathers. And again, that load just leads to burnout, stress, and mental health struggles. Because think about it, like if
mhm.
you're doing all that at home and then you're also doing that at work, like you manage a team, so you're project managing all of that as well, that means you're on you're in that mode 40 hours a week for work and then whatever hours you're awake at home. Like that's it makes me tired just thinking about it.
It does. Oof. No, it's true. I would say the book shares goes really I read it twice because I read it out loud to my husband. It shares research showing that in census and societal surveys, and the reason we do this is because he mostly works with women, right? So
Right.
who are like the primary income earners. So not just in America but globally, women will actually underreport their income, which is interesting,
I
but we'll
thought
get
that
into
was
that
so
later.
interesting.
Yeah. Because, but because we're protecting norms too. So
Hmm.
like the husbands, even if they're willing to do the work, sometimes like the ouchiness of the power that's happening with the spouse is also limiting. So sometimes it's a self-limiting thing to protect someone else. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I think
um
that's interesting.
During the pandemic, we saw the consequences in real time. I think between February 2020 and 2021, stats we found said over 2.3 million women left the labor force, dropping participation rates to their lowest in more than 3 decades. So working mothers were 17 percentage points more likely than fathers to reduce their hours, and over 5 points more likely to leave their jobs entirely. And this is stuff we've talked a lot about here before. This is not something that is going to surprise anyone. I'm not saying that like, oh, can you believe that? It's just like it hurts just saying it out loud because
Yeah.
it it really just people were in so much pain, including a lot of times the husbands for their spouses because times were desperate. Like,
Yeah.
okay, our kids can't go to school. What's the income we need the most? Or what's the hardest thing to get out of? What provides the best benefits?
Yep.
So, okay. And we talked about it because like it's also what led some younger women into this whole trad wife movement. Like, I'll
Right.
make the best of it, I guess. So I'll become an influencer and put on a prairie dress. I mean, but honestly, it is something that 5 years later we're seeing, and as coaches, we're feeling and seeing and hearing the bitterness from that.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I think back to when I decided that I didn't and I use the word I because it was my decision. I decided I didn't want to send Liam to daycare. We had decided to spend money on having a nanny. She was awesome. I think I've shared this before. Loved her. She loved Liam. She was great. But when it came right down to it, going off to work every morning and knowing I'd come home to maybe missing his first steps, maybe this, I just couldn't do it. And at the time, I was making less money than Darren, not a ton less, but enough less. And so you're right, he was carrying the insurance. I could see where he had opportunities to grow in a place that I wasn't sure if I did. Although in retrospect now, I think I probably could have grown at Beltone for sure. And and so I made that decision, and then it became really hard for me to ever think about how I go back because was this gap, um, of being a stay-at-home mom and that sort of thing. And I often say, yeah, to Darren, like, if you paid me for everything I do, and I don't say this to be a jerk, but like, if you paid me for all the stuff I do, and his reaction is always, well, I take out the trash, I do this, I do that, which is true. But the point of all of this is the mental load. That's the thing that I had to read a couple of different times was the idea of if you're okay, so you decide and to let your husband take over the chore of doing the laundry. It's not just about putting the laundry in and getting it out. It's about anticipating switching out towels, switching out sheets. Is there enough laundry detergent? Is there this? Is there that?
Are there
When do we do it?
stains? Do
Are there
some things need to be
stains?
hung?
Yeah,
Should we do a whole
exactly.
episode on laundry?
Oh, yeah, yeah, totally.
Do the
I mean,
wives
that's
get
the kind of
separated?
stuff yeah, it's more than just the act of doing the chore. There's so much anticipatory planning, as you said earlier, that is involved around what women do at home versus what want to do at home or what men do at home. And I think you and I both probably have husbands that are pretty good at sharing
We
the
do a
the
lot.
chores. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in our case too, with I mean, first, when we got married, we had med school debt. And then,
Hmm.
like over time, obviously we paid that off. And then we have our kids' school debt,
Oh,
or kids' school tuition. And at a certain point, like it's hard to argue that what he does for a living is definitely going to pay that off quicker.
right.
But like that there's that whole thing that we got into in the episode about mental load and like in this power code, men are sort of locked into it too. This is all patriarchy.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
like they're sort of locked into it, and then they don't get that choice in that time. And even, because embedded in all the stuff at home that keeps us from advancing in the workplace is also the time that you do get the opportunity to build the intuition and the connection about what's needed there, right? So
Hmm.
later on in life, a lot of men are finding they're not as close to their kids because of that, right? Like
Right.
they're not the ones the kids are calling. So like embedded in all this, it sucks for everybody,
Yeah.
right? Like because the end all be all of life isn't to be so powerful and successful financially or status wise in your work life. If your home life, someone's resenting the hell out of you, or
Yeah.
or like you're not as connected.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, again, we've said it before, patriarchy hurts everyone. We just rewatched the Barbie movie, and every time Ken says, once I figured out it wasn't about horses, I wasn't interested anymore. I was like, yeah, the patriarchy is not fun for anyone.
Hilarious. Um, I would say, like, getting back to this, I feel like, and this is me, and I think even you. I mean, I hold you up as better than me at boundaries and stuff. But women who set great boundaries at work and like and
Mm,
at home and say, hey, like, don't call me. This is what we have the nanny for, or this is, like this is your you're with your dad. um, they still run themselves ragged at home, even if
yeah.
they've got great boundaries. We just see it all the time. I have great boundaries and they go out the window sometimes when
Hmm.
when things shift into trauma or like great need. It's just like, all right, I do know how to, do know how to like turn this ship around. I can do it. Until the load is shared, there's no real space to take, new opportunities without overloading. So I feel like I don't know. Like I feel like you watch this and they covered this so well in the book with their own stories.
Yeah.
You see like modern women and daughters we're raising, they know to go for these things and they know to put themselves out there and they set themselves up with all the village they need. And then they have a second kid and it all goes out the window.
Yeah.
Like then it's like, and then we convince ourselves like, this is the flexibility I wanted.
Right. I mean, to be fair, yeah, I had Charlotte and Liam are 4 years apart, and by the time I had Charlotte, I was already working at Weight Watchers. But and I don't know that I would have wanted to do any more than I did, but I mean, one of the reasons I stayed at a job that paid like absolute shit is because I could work when they were at school. That flexibility. But then that meant when I was at home, I was still doing, I remember saying like, you should be happy that I do this. It's invisible to you, because all the stuff I was able to do on the off hours so that on the weekends we could spend time together. Um, but it was making, going to Target during the week, going to the grocery store during the week, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting too that, I think part of this stems from as Gen X, and again, I was having this conversation with my client yesterday, like as Gen X, we are the first to actively go out and decide to work and not be like work immediately, right? Whereas our moms kind of they did it, they got married. If they went back to work, more often than not, it was because they had to. Whereas like Gen X,
Yeah.
we grew up, I was thinking if we picked a song, that stupid I Can Bring Home the Bacon song from back.
Yes.
I mean, we grew up with that commercial that we can do it all. We can have it all. And what that led to again was so much burnout. And so there's an interesting just very tiny bit at the end of the chapter about how Gen Z, they also want a career and home, but they are very clear that their career has to fit into their life and not life fit into their career. And so I thought that was an interesting shift in generations as well.
Right. And again, this is like goes into another whole topic that I would love to, chew on another episode. But the difference between those two things is like, besides the flip of the focus, is Gen X did not have I mean, there was definitely a niche part of Gen X, but like, I don't know any part of Gen Z, no matter like where they land. politically, that doesn't feel like the weight of the world is like theirs to fix right now.
Oh yeah.
We didn't. We were sort of coddled into thinking we could if we wanted to, but like we could probably make anything happen that we need. We definitely had a, I don't know if it was a false positive or if it was just really true at that time, this idea that there were opportunities we could go after. Um,
Well, if you were white.
it's true. Well, we know that now.
Yeah.
At the time,
Yes.
I think
Of course.
I knew a lot less of what I know now, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's no excuse for that, but that's what it is.
Well,
But yeah, I think that there are like more of Gen Z is so much more awake
yes.
to all of that. So like there's like power at home, power outside, and is there even an outside that we can all agree on? So there's
Right,
that extra
right.
burden.
Yeah. I thought the interesting piece too is it's not just about capacity, but because of this mental load, um, and what we do at home versus what we do at work, it also changes ambition. I get that. I mean, I think I really resonate that with that, right? Because once I had kids, I thought, yeah, I can't even imagine. Again, this is what I would these are the conversations I'd have with Darren. Like, I can't imagine going back to a 9 to 5 job outside of the house because then what will my life look like if I
Mm,
continue to do all of this stuff? And of course, Darren would say, "Well, I'll do more." Yes, and the mental load still won't happen. And I don't know that's their fault. It's just, again, we've talked about this. Women hold this in their head differently, right? Like, I
yeah,
do know I've just been really aware of the whole laundry situation since I read that because I'm like, oh yeah, Darren knows how to do the laundry, but I could absolutely, if I gave that to him, we'd run out of laundry detergent. There's no, it's just not part of what he's ever had to think about since I've been a stay-at-home mom. And I'll be honest, I actively said, well, now that I'm staying at home, I'll do more of the work at home. And then I just never climbed back out of that,
yeah,
even working.
yeah. There is a definite roommate equitable thing that goes on around here where I'm like, okay, you cooked, I clean, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
I
yeah.
cooked, you clean. We have that in general a lot,
Hmm.
and I don't know that it's totally cool to like apply that to everything, but yeah, there's definitely this idea that like, oh, you worked a really long day and you have to work again in the morning, and it's like, wait, so did I.
I know,
I
I
was
know.
working here and taking care of everything,
But there's
but there's
right, but
this,
there's something about being at
yeah,
home, working from
yes,
home,
yes,
right? And
and
I do have
he
the
doesn't
ability.
say that.
No,
I
I
think
know.
it.
It's that's just I think that's one of the things that was most fascinating about this particular chapter. They don't really say it that I remember, and I just recently kind of reread it as well, but this is something okay, I'll just own it for myself. I do think this is something I have created, a monster I've created for myself. You're right. Darren never says that to me. But in my mind, I'm like, wow, you just commuted an hour after working all day. I work from home and I'm I am sitting down and watching Downton Abbey when he gets home. I will have just started it, right? So my day has been full too. Um, but yeah, there's something I've
Yeah.
created that monster for myself for sure.
Mm.
So fascinating.
Because like when he was working at home, how was it different?
When he over COVID, I think we all just kind of we did everything together, right?
Mm.
I went through a period where I was getting a subscription box of food that you made, and so I was sort of having fun with making dinner. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I was also working more during COVID, so I don't
Yeah,
know that
kind
it
of we
was any
were. We
different. We were
were.
working a lot during COVID.
Um, and you've sort of covered this, but I like this quote from the book from this chapter. It's not just doing the physical work that takes so much time, it's the planning known as the
Mhm.
cognitive labor at work. This is a highly paid skill. Women
Right.
handle the bulk of cognitive labor at home. This really stuck out to me because I tell you this a lot. Like I scan and solve, scan and solve, scan and
Yep.
solve. Like
Yep.
like I do that in my sleep. I do that when people don't want me to. As a projector, it's just natural for me to like observe things. And I want to. I'm careful to say I don't necessarily know better than other people, but I can see how to solve things in a way if
Yes.
someone would want me to share that. But it is an interesting thing that I haven't ever been paid for in my, or like paid enough for. I definitely have. Like I've had jobs where that's a big piece of
but
what
not
made
at
me
home.
good at it, but not at home.
I
Right.
know. That blew me away too. How often are we paying attention to all the bits and pieces? My sister was just in town and we created a gorgeous like agenda for the whole week and I typed it all up and I sent it to Darren and the night before she comes in, he says, "So on Monday, am I going with you guys?" Well, going with us was a tour of Warner Brothers, which cost $75. I literally lost my shit. So much so that Charlotte was a little bit like, chill out. But I was like, what are you talking about? Like, not only do we have a conversation about this, that's a whole nother topic, but like I typed up this agenda. I sent it to you here. I sent it to you at work. I haven't read it yet.
Oh, um, you just described my whole 2 weeks because
I
I
know I
put together
did.
a Google Doc and oh my God.
But
The
that's
amount
the
of
thing.
people that walked up to me and like asked me things that were on the fucking document.
But again, think about that. If we did that at work, right? Like if we
Right.
were at a corporation and we were project managers and we typed up a scope of work, right? We would be paid so well to do that. But
I know.
we type up or create scopes of work at home for free.
For free.
Free? Bedtime stories. Thank you very much, Adam
Yes.
Sandler.
I was actually thinking of Bridesmaids
Oh, a
when she
totally
gets the
different movie.
tattoo. She gets the tattoo for free.
Oh, I was doing I was doing
Bedtime stories.
bedtime
I love
stories.
that. That made more sense. Yeah.
For free?
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, like we are emailing the teachers, we are coordinating
mhm.
rides, we are signing up for camps, we're remembering birthdays, we're remembering in-laws' birthdays. Um, it's not just the do the dishes, do the laundry. Like I think I mean Darren is totally willing and often does. He'll do the dishes, he'll cook, he would do the laundry if I asked. Um, the physical stuff he has no problem with, but the amount of time it would take me to explain this this kind of stuff, right? This cognitive planning. It does again, this is why I feel like I've created my own monster because I'm like, it would just be easier for me to do it.
No, I know. And there are like I this has happened to me a lot recently where Peter's like, just tell me where it is, or like, just and I'm
Mm-hmm,
like,
mm-hmm.
my brain, I used to be able to do that. Like my brain just it's gonna be so much faster if I just walk there and find it. I
Yep.
don't mean to do that. Like I totally think you're all capable. It's just at this point I'm so tired. This is what I'm doing
Yeah.
a lot, especially when they were like middle school age, doing this a lot. And I want to be like, I'm not playing Candy Crush. I am contributing a gift to the coach or the teacher or the coordinating rides, or I'm signing up to volunteer at this thing, or I'm like, making sure we got that application deadline met so that you can participate in that one camp or that after school thing, or I'm finding a tutor, or I'm setting up driving lessons. Like this is outside of my own work.
Well, that's
you know
just it. And for
and
those
it's
that are
like
not
for you to
watching video, she's
think
holding her
like,
phone.
right, like, sorry, yeah, I'm holding my phone. Like, in order to be near you and be part of the family, but still stay on top of that stuff, sometimes I was doing that. And I had to
Yeah,
make sure that's what they knew I was doing. So they didn't
I
think
did
I
that
was
too.
like zoning out.
Yeah.
Like I'm not, like sometimes now I am doom scrolling, but like I wasn't. And I just remember thinking, like, if you were as productive on your phone as I am,
Yeah.
there would
No,
be a lot of different things happening. But
I did the same thing. I would have to actively be like, I'm going to do this real quick, so that like, because I would
same.
same, I'm sure same with you. Like we'd be out to dinner and we'd be waiting for something, and I just like, oh, okay, just 1 second. I'm just gonna
Right.
I gotta do this real quick, right?
Right. You were
And
constantly doing that for the plays and all that. Yeah,
oh
I
yeah,
remember.
yeah. I mean, I've been doing it since Irish dance since Charlotte was
Right.
4.
Right.
yeah.
Same.
And so, and again, I'm not neither one of us are demeaning our husbands in particular. We can only speak to our husbands. It just
Mhm.
is the nature of the beast. And so when we look at women in this chapter in particular, when we look at women thinking about, well, I'd really like to go prefer that promotion, but that promotion means, because that's the other thing too, right? In our culture right now, it isn't a 40-hour work week anymore. You got to be putting in the 50, the 60 hours a week. Men, because women are at home doing all of this stuff, men have the capability of working 50, 60 hours a week. If we had those same jobs and we had to work 50, 60 hours a week, and then we had to come home and do all of this, oh my, there's just literally not enough hours in the day.
Having a funny thought that I didn't really put this in an outline where this fits, but in Portland, there, and I'm sure it's not just Portland, but in Portland, there is often a very stereotypical conversation that comes from some reality that it's a hard dating pool because a lot of these boys want mommies, right? Like they'd love to play video games and God knows where they're making their money. Maybe some of them are baristas, maybe some of them are working on projects where they have like a tech, part-time work from home. I don't know what it is. But like that's a turn off too. That like
Oh
these guys
yeah,
have no problem attracting a powerful woman who wants to work all the time. Like none. And
right.
not just because they want like a sugar mama. I don't even mean that it's always money wise. It's just they don't have any issue with power, and that's a turn off.
Yeah.
So
Well,
like
there is a part earlier in the book where some women there they talk to a couple of different women that say, they are having a hard time dating because they want a man that has as much ambition as they do, but they also understand that with that ambition means, okay, now who's going to do the stuff at home, right? And that's just it. I mean, again, this is not groundbreaking information, but this idea of the stuff that's done at home as woman's work, right? It's invisible. I already said it myself. Like I would say that to Darren. Like so much of what I do is invisible to you, and until it's valued financially, culturally, politically, we cannot expect equality to take hold anywhere else. And that's, I think, so one of the things I think is so fascinating about this book was my guess is it came out in 23. So it was obviously probably started writing it in 2020. And a lot of what they're talking about in this book, I think, oh, is it's already feels irrelevant based on the um, climate that we live in the United States right now. But I think that's part of the issue that I was finding so um, like it was hurting my soul to read so much of this because I was like, we're getting knocked down left and right. Our rights are being taken away. The ability to have any, the way we're being looked at in humanity, let alone in the workforce, right? There's this whole jackass out there now that thinks women shouldn't be able to vote and blah, blah, blah.
it's a lot more than one jackass, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I know, but I'm thinking very specifically about the guy. I'm not even going to give his name,
Mm.
but it's like because when they wrote this, I don't think they expected that we would be going backwards the way we have gone backwards. So it's
Mm-mm.
weird to read this book that is so new. Like, God, what I wouldn't do to have Katty K or Claire Shipman on this pod because I would love to pick their brain, not only about the confidence code, but about how what they thought was happening. Like, they talk so much in the book about how COVID and people working from home, that was never going to change. It's changing, right? And I just think they had no comprehension when they wrote this book and put it out in 22, 23, that by the time we're reading it in 25, we've gone back in time so much. So this idea of valuing what we do at home so that we can have equality at work, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's so messy though. There's this great article that I just saw today that I haven't fully read yet. Our friend JD sent it to me, and I think it's in the Atlantic, and it's all about how men are struggling and boys are struggling. And
Oh,
it's so hard to take in. You and I know it. We talk about it
yeah,
all the time.
yeah,
It's so hard to take in right now
yeah.
because we are living, the media just has us on these pendulum swings, but we always get to ground in and remember that as women, we're never trying to have power over. We're never trying to expunge or like silence. We're really
Right.
trying to bring everyone to the table. And I'm not trying
Yep.
to say it's like, just benevolent on one side and malevolent or malevolent on the other. But truly, like, there's got to be a way to look at all of this that takes care of everyone, because
Yeah.
at both boys graduations it was all girls getting these academic awards. It was really fascinating,
Wow.
and I'm not saying poor boys, I'm just saying what's
No.
happening there, right?
Yeah.
If a boy who happens to be white excels at something, and like, what kind of impact can he have? What kind of room can he make for someone else? And there shouldn't be shame in that, and we shouldn't prevent that. And we're not saying we want to. That's the thing.
Right.
But I was saying, like, to my son, I'm like, when people are, and he was agreeing with me, when people are in the whirlpool flailing, they're going to grab onto the first thing that makes them feel relevant and seen. And if it's only
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, or, if it's only something that's
Kind of
saying,
coming to our
yeah,
side.
yeah, like, yeah, then they're going to
Yeah.
grab onto it. So it's like, how do we collectively look at this without going backwards for women?
Right.
The response to whatever crisis men are in isn't putting us back in the kitchen with no
Right.
voting rights. It's just
Right.
never going to
This
get
is
us
not our
anywhere.
fault. Yeah. I also think
Uh,
I wonder. This is literally just coming to me as you said, bringing it all equal. I wonder if there's also sometimes there is a lane for power over, but there
mhm.
also needs to be, so there, if there could be this balance of like, and there's going to be women who enjoy power over, and there's going to be, as we said at the beginning, you said at the beginning, men who enjoy power for, and get filled up by that power over. I mean, isn't always necessarily a bad thing. I think it's necessary sometimes. It's
Yeah.
just that it's so prevalent. But yeah, no, that's absolutely correct.
Mm.
Whatever is going on for men and boys right now, the idea that it's because of feminism that they got themselves there, again, it's patriarchy. It is the
Right.
exact
Because
opposite.
honestly, it wouldn't have been this easy
Right.
to strip away so much if they didn't always have the power. And I just
Correct.
don't think they realize
Yeah.
that. Ugh. I want to talk about what they said about marriage tax. I thought
Yeah.
that was really good.
Hmm.
I hadn't really heard that term before. If I had, it didn't totally stick for me. But the reality that even as women make incredible strides in the workforce, we still can't shake off that presumed responsibility.
Yep.
Um, we're achieving things at work, but at home we're still doing all the dishes, folding the laundry, wiping the butts, and the unpaid labor. That breeds resentment or tension, especially when it's invisible. And it isn't just history. Like, that isn't just history, or you and I with young kids. Like, as of mid 2025, right now, nearly 212,000 women have left the workforce in this country in just the first half of the year. And participation for mothers aged 25 to 44 in the workplace is down to a 3-year low. So,
Wow.
like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have any words for that. Yeah, I think as you said, it started with COVID, and then if you're looking at Gen Z graduating college and trying to decide where do I want to put my energy, when also they're wondering what world is even left for us. I guess I'm not, it's a shocking statistic but when I take a step back, I'm like, yeah, okay. I
right.
see you, you know. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think this book in general, again, we'll come back and speak to it on a bigger, broader basis later on in the season, but this piece in particular, I can't imagine that there isn't a woman out there who wouldn't read this chapter in particular and not resonate with it, that they wouldn't feel it. Even the women that we know that have had higher power jobs than you or I have had, who've built, several million-dollar businesses. I mean, you and I did have a conversation not too long ago with one of our mentors who
Mm-hmm.
is in the process of changing, of thinking about what next business she wants to build. And
Right.
she told us she actively decided after leaving the last business that she was not going to do anything for at least the summer because it was the first summer and her daughter's like 8, that she
Yeah.
didn't want to have to worry about going to the next meeting with a
Yeah.
room full of men telling her what to do,
Right.
and so
No,
she
it's
wanted to take the time to spend with her daughter in ease and flow. and then she'd
Yeah.
think about it, you know. I mean, and yeah, it's
It's
so
one of the P's in this title should be privilege, because when you just saying that reminds
mm,
me, like, it is such a privilege to have this conversation, to think of it as a choice, to think of it as like the struggle when so many people do not have a choice. They have to work full time, and there's maybe
yeah,
no power in that. There's just a
right.
paycheck.
Yep.
And so it's fascinating to me to think about. It's funny that, like, talking about our mentor made me realize that, because it still applies to me.
Me
it
too.
I've always said, I don't, like, the whole idea. It's funny. Do the kids say staying home now? I don't know, but like, staying home is like a choice, is a privilege and a burden, right? Like, there is
Yeah.
some things about it, or a sacrifice, a privilege and a sacrifice. Like,
Yeah.
you really are removing yourself from feeling relevant until you kind of, work on your mindset. You can completely work on that and reframe it in a really genuine way. um but there's also like less stress in certain ways, right? There's less cost in certain ways, and so many people like me who are working in a nonprofit were feeling like their entire paycheck was going towards the resources it takes to get to work, to actually be dressed
Right.
for work, and to care for the kids, and to, like, so what's the point? But
Totally. Yeah.
some people have no choice, and it's like, where do those women even get to access power?
Right. Chances are they don't, right?
Right.
And that's yeah, privilege. I mean, honestly, most of what we talk about, there's
Yeah.
a film of privilege over it, no question. And we're aware of that. I don't know if we
Yeah.
always point it out. And then I'll detour a little bit and say, and as someone who works from home, who I mean, I also I am not free from the worry. Just because I get to work from home, I
Excuse
doesn't
me.
bless you. I it also means I do make less money. And so
Hmm.
there's a lot of stress around that, you know. So
Yeah.
I guess it goes back to what you said. Like, it's a privilege and it's also a stressor, you
Hmm.
know. And it
Hmm.
would work if I worked 40 hours a week, which I can't even comprehend based on my life right now. Um, I would bring in more money, but I would also have a different level of stress. I mean,
I would say
it's
when we're in
stress,
a
whatever.
creative mode, you're working a lot more than 40 hours a week, let me say.
Well,
So,
that's yeah. But again, it's invisible, right? Because I mean, even the stuff we do creatively, you know, we think about this with the retreat. It's like, okay, it's a certain investment to come to the retreat. That investment doesn't even really pay us,
no,
right?
it
It's
doesn't.
at
And
all. And I'm not complaining, but it's just an interesting thing that I don't ever really think about until we're in the throes of creating the retreat. And then I'm
that's
like,
true.
wow, the amount of hours we're putting in, it's fascinating. So,
It is.
anyways, anything else you want to say before we talk about the song?
No, I think that we covered it.
Well, when I say we talked about the song, that's because we're not going to quote any lyrics from the song because there's really no lyrics to quote that make any sense. But it is still a good, I would say, song if you needed that. I was just doing a interview the other day where somebody asked me, like, how do you always, how would a woman in leadership who feels is walking into a room full of men, like, how would they come in with confidence, even if they were feeling less than confident? And I just pulled out the old, well, you know, go make a power pose, blah, blah, blah. So this is sort of a musical version of a power pose, in my opinion, which is the good old, I got the power. I got the power. God, I hope that doesn't come out.
It's getting
You
kind of
know, I
funny.
went to get the lyrics and I was like, there is literally no reason to quote this,
Yeah.
but it is a reminder. We honestly, we all we could have more power if we had what if it was shared at home a little bit more. I think,
Mm.
you know, and that would be true of women who don't have a choice to work from home, just like women who do, or who hybrid like you and I sort of do in working from home and running the house. Um, it
Oh, and I'll say, like, a kind of hippy dippy thing here, but I feel like you're going to feel more powerful if you even have a conversation about it and find out
yes.
how powerless your partner might even feel in their role. So
Agreed.
it's a really great opportunity to turn the dial up for both of you just by saying, what are you experiencing and what do you want and what am I experiencing and what do I want? And it's amazing how easy, how simple and how impactful that can be.
And it doesn't matter how old your kids are at this point. It doesn't even matter if
Mm,
you're empty nesting. There, that conversation could be really could up level your relationship regardless
it's
of
true.
who is in the house,
It's true.
for
Yeah.
sure. So the takeaway from
Oh
pots,
yeah.
pans, and
Well,
power.
I think it's simple. I think if we want to see women thrive in leadership and in life, and we do, we
Yep.
want that for men and women, but we
Yes.
want it definitely to include women. The change starts at home.
Yeah. And again, as Katty and Claire write, quote, for women, power more often lives in the blur of our action, in the residue of our value laden and emotionally attuned decision making, in the cracks of our endless efforts to stitch schedules, families, enterprises, and humanity together.
Hmm.
Mm.
So that means talking about balance, sharing the load, and valuing the work that makes everything else possible. And I think maybe this is one other thing I wanted to mention that they say, like part of that balance is remembering the F word, the other F word,
Yep.
which is fun. So Lisa, if you follow her, if you don't, you should. Like Lisa just really is good at fun. Lisa and Darren are really good at fun. I love it. I crave it. I even enjoy creating it for others. But I realized on vacation, I struggle sometimes with it under the weight of everything going on. Like I can enjoy things, but am I having enough fun? Never. And Brendan, it's the same, but for different reasons. So I think going back to that conversation we just mentioned having, a lot more fun can happen when like you're really aware of what each other needs and wants. Then it's just so much more easy to be like, okay, let's just let's scrap all of this and just have like a fun weekend and not worry about who's doing what, and like everyone can go back to work a little more replenished and
Yeah.
focused. I So yeah, that balance thing reminds me of what they said about the F word, and that's something I took from it that I'm really going to work on.
Yeah. I love
I'm going
that.
to work on fun.
Work on, well, they talk about
That
that.
might
You
be the
kind of
problem.
you
I
have to
know.
schedule it in. That's not that unusual. All right,
Mhm.
well, we'd love to hear from you. Something that as you've listened to this, what's one thing you want to shift at home or maybe already have shifted at home that has made space for you to step into your own power? If you listen on Spotify or watch really on Spotify, you can comment on this episode right here so we can see it. I see all of those and I respond. You can obviously respond on any of our reels that we put up on social media, and you can just email us at the things we know podcast 23 at gmail.com. Also, plug for our mailing list as well.
Yes, absolutely. Also, I want to say, before I say thanks for joining us and thanks for joining us, I want to say if you're a man listening to this, going, hey, I do a lot like you're listening to this, we know. So good
Totally
work.
fair.
Good work
Cheers.
sharing the load already. And this doesn't mean that we think there aren't men who are totally making this possible. And we love them and we luckily live with some. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you for
love that.
listening, everyone.
And share this conversation with whoever you think needs to hear it. And we will be back next week with the things we know.
Bye.
Are you feeling stuck? Like you're standing at the edge of something more, but you're sort of unsure on how to take the leap?
If so, it is time to break free from the hesitation, the self doubt, and that spinning in place. Join us, Lisa and Kari, for Unstuck and Unstoppable, which is a powerful masterclass designed to help women just like you move from uncertainty to bold, clear action.
So, in this transformational session, you'll learn how to break through the barriers that have been holding you back. You'll reconnect with your power and your purpose, and you'll step confidently into your next chapter with clarity and courage.
So, this is your moment to stop playing small and start living the life that's been calling you. If you're ready to move forward with confidence and create what's next, this masterclass is for you.
Absolutely. So go to our website, thethingsweknowpodcast.com, and click on Masterclass. We cannot wait to see you there. You're not meant to stay stuck, you're meant to be unstoppable.
Can't wait to see you there.